Hey everyone, this is Shanti Kumaraswamy Street welcoming you to lesson 67 of Wednesdays with EWAT. You're here with me in London, well, virtually in London, where we are going to be talking about negotiations. So as you're coming in, hopefully you're being told I'm live now. Then as you zoom in, do let me know if you are able to make this class, and we are going to be chatting about, as I say, negotiation. I'm just going to test my, oh, Keiko, lovely. I thought I saw you make a note on the EWAT club. So welcome to my EWAT clubbers, and on this very sunny-ish afternoon here in London. Hi Susan, lovely to see you. Okay folks, so what is it all about? So as you know, May has all been about decision making and negotiation. So in this lesson 67, we are going to be talking about how you can negotiate a pay rise or a pay raise, as Americans would say in American English. So what we're going to be doing is I want to find out a bit about yourselves, about how you have negotiated a pay rise, if you ever have, and what it was like and how successful it was. So yeah, because as I was thinking about today, and I was thinking, well, what should we talk about in terms of negotiation skills? And I mean, what is more important to most of us than negotiating a pay rise? Now there is this big gender gap. We have a lot of conversations here. We've, and it's ongoing in most countries, most businesses, most professional sectors. There's this big gender gap between men and women, and what women are paid compared to what men are paid. And I know that in the past, when I was in my previous role in finance, I discovered to my horror that after a few years that I was actually being underpaid compared to my colleagues. And that really disappointed me and upset me, because I had the same qualifications, I'd had the same years of experience, and I was doing exactly the same job. And yet I discovered that they were earning more. And so I had to make a difficult decision, which is, do I ask for a pay rise or do I leave the company? And I don't know about yourselves, but a lot of women find it very difficult to ask for a pay rise. There is that, I don't know what it is about women, and please correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Whoever is watching here, if you're a gentleman watching now live or the recording, men are more likely to ask for a pay rise than women are. Women tend to not consider their value or their worth as quickly and as assertively as men. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, Gabriela, Keiko, and I presume also there are cultural differences depending on where we are. But I know from my experiences that yes, women are unlikely, unless you're, of course, at the interview stage. If you're at the interview stage, and of course also depends on our ages, right? The younger we are, maybe the less likely we're going to ask for a pay rise. But the older, as we get more experience, as we become more confident, then we're more likely to do so. And certainly that is if we're looking for another job, and it's at that point that we can negotiate our salary. Hi Daniela, lovely to see you. I'm so glad you can make today's lesson. So we're talking about how to negotiate a pay rise. So Daniela, I would be really interested to know what your experience has been. Have you ever asked for a pay rise? Have you received a pay rise as a result of negotiating for one? People will have different experiences from it. But so today I want to look at, so I was researching to see, and please tell me share with me your experiences. you know, what is also the experience in terms of the business culture in your country? You know, is it expected that you will negotiate a pay rise? And when I'm talking about negotiate a pay rise, I mean whilst you're in your job, not when you are applying for a new job, and you know you at that point, then it makes sense that that is when you feel, you know, the strongest and the most likely to get a pay rise, because you're joining a company. But the problem is that a lot of us maybe stay in a company. Okay, things have changed a lot in the last few years. People don't stay in companies so long, so as long as. Sorry, let me rephrase. We don't stay in companies as long as we used to. So we tend to move on a lot, either through redundancy or because we find better jobs. But if you are in a job and you are ambitious and you value what you do, and you know, it's not just a question of valuing what you do, it's also seeing your career prospects and, you know, and valuing your contribution, and also wanting to progress and to develop professionally. So at that point you think, you know, well, actually I think, you know, maybe you've made a lot of money for the company. Maybe you've put in extra hours. Maybe you've increased the number of clients or inquiries, or you have saved them a lot of money, whatever reasons. And you feel, you know, I'm entitled now, I think, to ask for that pay rise. But it's so difficult, isn't it? I don't know about yourselves. It is hard to ask, because it needs a certain amount of self-esteem, a certain amount of confidence to ask for that. But above all, it also needs a lot of preparation. You need to walk into that negotiation table, get to that negotiation table, well informed to put your case forward. You know, it's not enough to go around and whinge and whine and say that I am underpaid, you know, I'm being paid less than so and so. It just doesn't work, because it's just going to irritate your bosses or the next layer of management, because they don't like anyone that whines. So you need to put it in a way that is professional. So in today's lesson, looking at this, I mean, I'm sure you have lots of tips on how you have negotiated or how you would negotiate a pay rise. So please share with me, because I think it's important. We need to, of course, when negotiating a pay rise, also there is that personal element, isn't it? Because you're asking it for yourself. It's easy when we're negotiating a contract or negotiating for a project, or you're putting a bid forward and then you're negotiating price, to stay fairly objective. But when it comes to negotiating a pay rise for ourselves, you have all that emotion. So it's really important that we are as prepared and as rational and objective as we can be. And that takes a lot of hard work. I don't know about you, but it certainly would for me. But so, you know, please share with me. You're very quiet down here, apart from saying hello to me. So here we are. So I was looking around and I thought, yeah, I would like to share with you, because I would like to know what your tips are in terms of negotiating this pay rise. So I started looking around, researching, and of course, one of the main parts, the biggest thing was that when we are thinking about, you know, negotiating for that pay rise, we need to present our request as a business case. You know, you're not just going in and saying, well, I'm underpaid. I think I'm paid too little. I need more money. That's just not going to convince anyone. I need more money. We all need more money. It's like when we say, oh, I need more time. Yeah, great. Okay, I need more time. How present me a business case? Now think about it. All companies need a business case. It's like, imagine you're going to the bank. You need a loan. The bank is not just going to go, oh, I need more money for this. No, give me a business case and we'll think about it. What is your business plan? So the first thing you need to do is, of course, do your research. And you need to also have a clear idea of what you want. But how do we do that? So first and foremost, one of the, what I picked up from the research is that, Susan, you're saying knowing one's own worth is very important, and then preparing how to present that is key. Yes, but it's really hard, that knowing one's own worth is very important. And we say that, and we just throw these words out, and we go, yes, and everyone nods in agreement. Is, yeah, you're right, absolutely. But how do we know what we're worth? Most of us underestimate, or we undervalue ourselves. Particularly, I have to say, women, we do that. We'll maybe take on extra work and then, just feel like we're not worthy of this extra, money. So we need to be quite strong and quite forcible, but we need to present a very strong case. Because the problem, of course, with gender differences, and I am speaking as a woman, and I know my male followers will say, Shanti, I don't agree, but there is a tendency that if a woman is too forceful, she comes across as, oh gosh, listen to her, she's so aggressive. But if a man is forceful, they're not considered aggressive. So, we have to really be careful in the way we present ourselves, but be serious about it. So I feel sometimes our business case tends to have to be more, not more important than someone else's, but the way we present it has to be very clear. But it also means that we have to stay professional. We have to keep the emotion out of our voices and out of our demeanor, the way we present ourselves. So that's quite tough. And, we don't always get it right, but, we can work at it. So first of all, it's knowing our worth. But there are two ways we're going to work on this worth, because the worth is this, it has to be quantifiable value that we give to a company. So first of all, you can't go in there and go, well, I want, a 25% pay rise, or I want to earn this amount, and you just pick a number from the air. No, it's got to be sensible. So where do we start from? How do we get a benchmark? How do we get a target figure? We need to look at the market value of our role. So do some research. Perhaps you can find out people who do a similar role to you, maybe in different organizations, and maybe ask them what their salaries are, what they earn, what is their package maybe. Sometimes people have a lower salary, but they have a higher bonus structure, or they have a higher salary, lower bonus structure. Depending on your roles, people have a salary package that is a mixture of the two. I'm just stopping here because Daniela is saying, I've never asked for that. I'm sure where it should be the right time to ask, maybe at the end of the yearly review. Yes, well, I'm going to be talking about timing actually, Daniela. You're very right. Yes, and timing is everything as to when to ask. That's critical. Let's look at, hi Jen, lovely to see you. So, no, I can't see you, but I feel you, as it were. Yeah, Daniela, very right. Absolutely, timing. So you need to think about it. But first and foremost, our research. This is market value. So getting the market value of what is the average package you could expect if you were to go somewhere else. So you could ask people in other organizations who have a similar role to yours. Maybe you could ask your colleagues in your own company about it. Now, when I was reading this sort of research and I was looking at one of these tips and pieces of advice about asking colleagues, I know that, for example, in the British culture, which we've alluded to in previous lessons, or even here in the EWAT Club, is that the British do not like talking about salary. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that British will not do is talk about money. So if I go and ask a colleague what they're earning, they are going to resist answering me. So they are going to be pretty vague. They're not, they're going to avoid us answering that question. So I know here that I wouldn't be able to do that. depending on where you work and what the culture is in terms of talking money, it might be easier. So do that research. You can look at also job searches, looking at recruiters, looking at the similar role that you have, what sort of salary is being offered to someone if you were going to apply for a similar job. LinkedIn is also a place, LinkedIn jobs also gives you some ideas there. So you get a feel of what the market value is of your job. So that gives you the market value. Oh, Susan's saying the Germans are completely tight-lipped about salary. Okay, tight-lipped means their lips are shut tight. No way. It's an unspoken rule that you don't ask your colleagues what they earn. So very similar to the British culture, you don't ask. So consequently, the way for them would be to ask recruiters, to get an idea of market value. Okay, so it's a big no-no. You're not going to ask your colleagues. They're not going to answer. And then they'll stop being your friend too, working with you. So, so that's your market value. Then you want to look at your own value. So, okay, you've got your market value. You think, okay, so this is typically what my role is in the market. You have an idea that, okay, so that is one. Now, what is my value? And when we talk about value here, we need to look at the monetary value that you have brought the company. Now, in some situations, and you need to sit down and think about it. You need to think about in the last year or 2 years or since the last time you got a pay rise, what have you brought in to the company? And, and what do you bring to the company? Not just what you have brought, but what do you bring? What have you done that has made an impact to the company? Perhaps you, maybe you're in sales, of course, maybe if you're in sales, for example, you have targets and you have achieved your targets and in fact exceeded your targets every single year. You have, maybe your target is a mixture of new business and increasing business from existing clients. And so you can look at from existing clients, you increased it by so much, you brought in more clients. Perhaps you help the company save money by introducing new systems, new processes. You have perhaps helped, save money, reduce costs. You will look at your role and see, well, what have you done? So it's not just about maybe new business, depending on your role. If you are someone who's not, you don't have a sales target, you don't have a target to achieve, but you have perhaps helped train other people. There are teachers who I know will help train new teachers. So you've put in a lot of extra hours and helping. You have worked extra on certain projects, or you've put your name forward to it. You've volunteered for a number of things. So it's that sitting down and really looking in a objective way what you have offered the company, what value you've offered the company. So in terms, and and try and quantify it as much as you can. And if you haven't done as much as you'd like to, then maybe you could see about how much more productive you are. Maybe you work faster than someone else, who knows. But think about all the things you bring, and also if you've also had recommendations or you've had good feedback from colleagues, and maybe ask around, because also you might want to use, you might call on them to put forward a recommendation on, how they found you as a colleague or as a co-worker. It's not just the values. Maybe you come across as you've been extremely helpful because you helped someone with a new system, you've mentored someone without being asked to, or you are extremely reliable, you offer your services, or you always deliver on time. But you can say that, but maybe you want to back that up also. So, perhaps ask your colleagues or your clients if they would be willing to give you some feedback. And you could do that just via an email. Would you be happy with it? And ask for feedback on that and say, how constructive feedback, how did I do, and use that and say, would you mind me sharing this information with my my boss, or and do that. So then you collate a business case for yourself. It's a bit like myself and online businesses, any business who asks for reviews, who asks for recommendations, who asks for feedback. Do the same way. That's what you want, particularly where your work involves working with a team. And so, you want to get good feedback so that you can offer it proactively to management, because you don't rely on management to ask. You bring forward all your case and put it to them, and this all just adds to your case. So do that research, and it's market value and looking at your value, whether it is in economic terms, financial terms, or in the value you give in terms of people, the people value you give, the human value you give to a team, and how you nurture people and how you encourage them. And there, of course, where it's difficult to quantify, you can get that from recommendations and feedback. It's an idea. I think this is where a lot of people forget that. We forget to ask, was it good? But don't just say, oh yeah, I thought you were great. No, you need to dig deeper. You need to ask them, how did I help you? How have I helped you do your job? Was I able to help you? Did you find was my explanation clear? Are you able to do this now? So, think really carefully about your role, because this is your chance. I'm just checking to see if anyone's come up with any comments. Please share with me your comments. I'd love to know what you're thinking, and maybe you have other ideas and how you would go ahead, how you would ask. So research, very important. Don't underestimate the importance and the real need to have your research, to be informed. Just like when we were talking about 2 weeks ago, negotiating your position, negotiating a price, you need to have your information. You need to do your research in the same way. Because what you want to do is you want to put your case forward as you want your company to measure you as an employee or as a consultant, or however you're working for that company, and not because you need extra money. But no, this is what I offer this company. This is the added value. This is what I give. Then, and this is coming back to what Daniela was saying, is asking for that crucial meeting. And timing is everything. Now, interesting, Daniela says the year-end review. Now, most companies, not most companies actually, I don't know whether it's most companies, but a lot of companies have annual reviews, annual performance reviews. And normally those annual performance reviews is when also you can expect a pay rise or pay freeze or whatever, or that's where you expect that pay or salary negotiations occur. If that's the case, then yes, then you want to use that situation, because that's your good chance, because that's when the conversation is likely to be heard, and you can put your case forward and be heard by management. if you have a company, and some companies are very rigid, so you need to know that. I mean, there are some public companies, for example, they only have once a year, and that's when you have that review. Some companies, have, it's non-negotiable, the salary is fixed and the salary goes up. So it depends if you're in the public sector, the private sector. Of course, if you're in the private sector, again, it depends on your company. When is the performance review? Performance review happens once a year. Some companies have it twice a year. Then every twice a year, if it's having a conversation with your boss to discuss things. Now, maybe the salary review happens once a year, but perhaps you have got performance reviews more often, maybe twice a year. And depending on the relationship you have with your boss, then it could be something that you could still raise at the performance review. It could be something that you'd say, I'd like to discuss this. Would it be possible? I'd like to talk about, a bit more about what, about, the prospects of, having an increase in my salary, or if I could talk about my package. Often people talk not just about salary, they talk about a package, because as I mentioned earlier, we have often salary, a basic salary plus bonuses. It could be that you could have also other perks involved, depending on your company and on the role you have. So you have to time it carefully. And of course, it's no point asking your boss when you're in the middle of a big project, everyone's really busy, everyone's doing, because if you start asking that, you'll just be considered a pain in the neck and, disruptive. And, that's just going to work against you. So absolutely, Daniela, I think, timing. Maybe ask around. If you're quite new to things, maybe you're chatting to your other colleagues. Those conversations in the office can be a real good research for you to find out when is a good time. If you're fairly new to a company, when is a good time to discuss or to bring the subject up on pay reviews, and or just to talk about, could I talk about how I'm doing, and are there prospects, what are the prospects, or what is the company's when will the company be considering pay reviews, because I'd like to be considered. I'd like to be considered for a pay rise. And if your boss says, well, now is not the time, ask them to say, so when would be a good time? Is it in the next few months? Would it be possible to, schedule a time when we could have a serious discussion about it, or a discussion about it? So, don't leave the matter or feel embarrassed. Just, but, don't be forceful, but at the same time say, well, would it be possible? And then they can say yes or no, and then say, well, fine. And then always follow it up with something in writing. Drop them an email, say thank you so much for your time. So, as far as I understand, I've diarized this, that in the next 3 months, I'll drop you a line, or, we can have this chat about the salary, about, talking about my pay package, and, have a more meaningful conversation about that. So make sure also you document it, so it doesn't sort of, and then, so at least you know what's happening and in where you're going with that. So yes, timing is very important. Think about it, and then, and then judge it when is the appropriate time to raise the subject. And when you're in there, once you've got this, you've put yourself there, it's then putting your case forward. And, and this is when, of course, you are then, with the research that you've done, where you've looked at what you have achieved in the company, what you've achieved with your work, and, put forward the information. So again, as I mentioned to you, it's a bit like where I have given tips on job interviews. When you go to a job interview and you're asked by a new employer, what are your achievements? You are stating your achievements. You're sort of saying, well, and you can start maybe with a problem. If there was a problem in your team, or there was a problem with a project, or there was, and how did you solve that problem? And what was the end result? And, what was your, how did you solve it? How did you help solve it? Your boss probably will be aware, but there's no harm in reminding them of your contribution into that situation, what you brought. And or reminding them of yes, how much money you have made for the company, how much money you saved the company, what how, if you were told to cut costs on certain areas and you were able to do that within the budget you were given, then show them how you did that. If you worked on a particular project and you worked well with people, again, using that recommendations, you got good feedback, bring it together and put your case forward, and be very professional about it, be very confident about it, but in a authoritative way, and without being demanding, and without being defensive or aggressive in any way. And just be authoritative and just say, this is what I have. And it's very difficult to deny facts. And so if people have facts, then, and they know that you've done your research, one, you know the market value, and two, you know your value. And you've thought about this, and you have come up with the reason why you deserve this pay rise. And once you've put your case forward, don't be afraid to stay quiet. Again, a very important trick in negotiation is to stay quiet, be silent, and let your boss or whoever it is you're speaking to respond to what you've said, respond to the case you've put forward, and hear what they have to say. Now, most people are not going to give you an immediate answer. Most bosses have to then refer to senior management or whatever it is, depending on your level. Adriana, hi, sorry, okay, hi. Yeah, sure, no problem, Adriana. But anyway, thank you very much for checking in. Hope your working day is going well. So I'll see you later, or see you soon. Take care. Thanks so much for tuning in. So yes, as I say, so let them in, and most of them are not going to be able to come up with straight away and go, yeah, sure, we'll, they're going to take things back and consider it, and then they're going to come back to you. And the thing is, some companies can offer pay rises to the employees. Some companies might be tied, and they might be under financial constraints and not be able to offer you the pay rise that you want. So here's when we need flexibility. You need to be flexible. And this is where, when I was reading all this research today, that they were saying we can't just be stuck with this one figure in our head. If the response from our bosses is not what we want, which is to say, I'm afraid we can't give you a pay rise this year because profits are down, we're making a lot of changes, which is really, which is the reality of a lot of businesses now. They are tight. They budgets are tight, and they can't offer maybe the pay rise that you want. Susan, you're saying sometimes it's helpful to make a counter offer. In other words, offer what you could still additionally bring, that you go that extra mile, that you'll dig deep and profit the company even further. Yeah, exactly, Susan. It's being flexible and then thinking, okay, if they can't offer you a pay rise, for example, maybe you could offer with a counter offer saying, okay, would it be possible maybe you could negotiate working one day from home? And therefore, that way you are reducing your travel costs by about 20%. Maybe you could say, well, in that case, okay, I understand if the company is in a situation, yeah, okay. would you consider me working from home 1 day a week? That would help me with my travel costs. Now, if you are that valuable to the company, they would consider it, because if they have to think, well, they're going to lose this person, but actually you're going to stay, but you're reducing, then they would think, okay, fine, no, we're going to keep this person and they can work from home 1 day a week. Yeah, that's great. Okay, no problem. And you're prepared to do that. You're not getting the pay rise, but your travel costs are going to be reduced. Daniela, you're saying exactly. This is why the employers should think of other solutions. Yes. Now, employers don't always think of that. That's why it's also down to employees, i.e. yourselves. Exactly, Daniela, would save a lot. Yeah, you're thinking about how you would work from home. Exactly. So you think, okay, pay rise. And this is why, when we think about exactly what we want, it's not just about that figure. Think about the sort of work-life balance you want. Maybe you've been working long hours, and maybe you say, okay, for this pay rise, so perhaps, okay, work 1 day a week from home, reduce my travel costs. It would make me more productive also, because I'm not doing all this traveling time. And, I'm working from there. So that's negotiation in terms of your pay rise. So they're not going to give you that, okay, I'm going to work from home 1 day a week, and that reduces my travel costs. And then also you could sort of say, well, if you've been working longer hours, you could negotiate. And, for that longer hours, you said, I'd like a pay rise for this to reflect the fact that and they can't, then you could say, well, maybe, I could work 1 day less and then work, longer for 4 days. But, there are all sorts of negotiations you can do. Susan, you've just said the difficulty is finding the right balance while negotiating, because unfortunately the corporate mentality is that everyone is replaceable. That is why doing your research before you start negotiating is incredibly important. I completely agree with you, Susan, but that's why a lot of people go in there without having the facts. If you go in there with the numbers, with exactly what you brought to the company, what you've brought to the table, it's really difficult for them to turn around and say, yeah, we're all replaceable, of course. But think about how complicated it would be. For starters, you leave, but then they have to go and recruit someone else. They probably have to train that person, so they've got recruitment costs. They have to pay you notice. They have to pay the recruiters to find someone else. They've got to find someone to train up. So there's going to be a gap in the time. Now, if you are truly valuable and you believe you're truly valuable to the company, that's why you have to show them your worth. So it's not good enough to just go, I deserve a higher salary. Well, yeah, all of us do. Thank you very much. Based on what? And I think that is where the number crunching is so essential. But the problem is many of us don't do that. And I'm included. In the past, I wouldn't. Because we just assume that the employers should know this. They should know what my value is, and for goodness sakes, don't they see me coming in every morning at 7 o'clock? I'm here until 7 in the evening. And Daniela is saying that if a manager thinks that you're replaceable, he or she is not a good manager. Yeah, that could be the case. Yes. That you're, no, yeah. And we have a lot of managers who are not good. That's why you need to put forward your case, so that it's a compelling case. Compelling case that says, right, okay, people. And, I would be amazed, and this also comes down to the relationship you have with management, the relationship you have with your immediate boss, and also depend on your role, that if based on your compelling research and case, they still don't see your value, then okay, then the question is it also a company you want to work for or work with. And maybe that comes to a point when you start thinking, maybe I'll start looking elsewhere if I'm not going to be appreciated. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe you are appreciated. You do want to be there, but you need them to see it. You know, we are all in the, most of us have to convince other people to do something. We're all replaceable. Think about also how when we go to shops, when we go to a cafe, when we go to a restaurant. I can go to one restaurant and the restaurant wants me to come. They want my custom. But that restaurant is not the only restaurant I need to go to. I mean, I can go somewhere else. But they want my loyalty. And so they're going to persuade me why they are, why they are worth my time. Now, I know this is a very complex, delicate situation between employee and employer. And this is hugely difficult because if an employee doesn't feel appreciated, and of course this is a big situation, right, of human resources, how do companies manage, the managerial skills, and, you know, how, sorry, Daniela, you're saying, but maybe I've been working in the UK for a long time and here there's a strong idea of investing in resources. Can you tell me a bit more about that? And Gabriela, you're saying generally employers care about good employees who are assets for the company. Yeah, in general they do. Because at the end of the day, people are the main resource for companies. Yeah, so they will invest in them. There are others that won't. But good companies, if they're serious, then they will. And I'd like to think that you work for people who value your contribution. And so consequently, when you're asking for that pay rise that you're asking needs to be based on genuine reasons, not just whining to say, no, I deserve more because. No, that's why you have to have that compelling reason. You know, many people will whinge and say, I deserve, I'm not being paid enough to do this job. And you think, well, why not? Why? Well, what do you do compared to, it's too easy to dismiss it and say, oh, I do so much more. But actually, when you sit down and think about it, no, that person actually isn't doing beyond what their job description tells them. They're doing what they should be doing and being paid for that. It's just that sometimes, and a lot of that comes down to also the feedback they get from their managers. Feedback from managers. So if you don't feel appreciated, you're not getting constructive feedback, then there is that tendency of then beginning to feel that you are undervalued. And that's where you start getting this resentment. Feedback is a completely different topic here to discuss. But so, that's why it's so important when you're asking for that pay rise to know exactly why you're doing it. And how, and really think deep, and also think, okay, if I don't get that pay rise, because we are in an economic climate for most companies, depending on the sector you're in, where it is going to be really tough for them to give me a pay rise, the pay rise that I feel I deserve, then how flexible can you be? So if they come back and say, well, we can't offer you what you're asking, but this is what we can offer, instead of walking off in a sulk and storming off and, threatening to resign, think, okay, that's fine. And if that's good enough for you, great. Or you could say, again, as we say, negotiate. Maybe, as I say, few hours, working from home, flexibility in terms of maybe starting later in the morning, or allowing you to have flexible working hours. So that you think, okay, so it's my work-life balance. So that is not it is a cost to the company, but if they can see that you're still productive, and if you're someone who's been productive, they can then negotiate. And I always say to people, and I also say to myself, if we don't ask, we will never know. And women in particular, we're very worried about asking. But we need to ask, but ask in a good way, in a professional, in a compelling way, based on information and good data behind us, backed with that. So that is negotiating, negotiating your pay rise, and hopefully, but even if it's not just a pay rise, maybe negotiating a better structure. Maybe you want to negotiate better working hours. But again, so the main premise there is always to be prepared, to do the research, to have an idea. Also, even research, if for example you don't quite know how other companies work, do some research so you know what other people do. Maybe you have friends who have similar jobs or who work in different companies, and you start exploring. So what's your working environment? What is it? And if you think this is something that could be possible within your company structure, within your company culture, then propose it. Again, you're the best person to know what is going to work in your company culture. And try and think creatively, and think, okay, so if I ask this, how about this? So how about if I ask this? Now, as Susan's saying, employees who go the extra mile. So that was a nice business idea I shared recently. So do extra, are such important assets to company, but they do get overlooked and taken for granted if they don't speak up and demonstrate their own pride in their work and ask for a pay rise. It gets you respect when people see you respect yourself. Exactly. And it's not about demanding. This is my right. I demand this. There are ways of asking. And yes, you're absolutely right. People who go that extra mile, who work extra hours, or, who were willing to work extra on a particular project when it's not really part of their job. And we all know this. As people are being made redundant, the people who stay on have to take on more responsibilities. They end up being overworked and too much. So you get to a point where you're just thinking, okay, I need to be appreciated. Now, companies are going to appreciate these people, but companies are also never going to offer if they don't have to give you a pay rise. So you need to ask. Yeah, because if I can get away with not offering a pay rise to my employees, I'm not going to do that. So you need to do that. And absolutely, what you say, Susan's absolutely right. If you respect yourself and you put forward your case, they will also respect it. But it all has to be based on, objective research. And they're not stupid. They know also what the market is out there. So if you've genuinely been, really been an asset to your company, they're not going to want to lose you. Because it's going to be, yes, they might say, well, they can get someone cheaper, younger, or whatever, but they'd have to train them up. They have to find them. And often there are months before they get the right people. The job market, there might be many people out there looking for jobs, but to get the right people is not easy. It takes them months and months. I have a neighbor who is retiring. Well, he should have retired. And for a long time, for about a good 8 months, his company didn't want him to retire because they couldn't find anyone to replace him with the skill sets he had. Now, this is a man in his 60s, which, here we are talking about, oh, well, as we get older, it's difficult. But they took ages and they were trying to persuade him. They said, okay, well, I'll stay until you find someone. But it took them forever to find someone with his skill set. Now, imagine. And so therefore he had the skill set and they could not find the people with his skill set. Maybe they're too young. They don't have experience. A lot of young people are coming into the job market. They just don't have that maturity. And so depending on where you're at in your jobs, and I defy anyone who tells me when they're too old, it all depends on how you promote yourself, how you portray yourself, that you do have a lot to offer. And this your skill sets, and then they will see it. And if it is important for the work-life balance, then say, okay, you can't give me a pay rise right now. I know I can see the budgets, I can see what's happening. This is what I want. I want to work fewer hours, or I want to work from home. Daniela, based on my experience, the best way to get a pay rise is looking for other vacancies in the company that are a step up for your career. Tell me more about your experience, Daniela. So what? So do you actually, you've told your boss, right, okay, if I can't get pay rise here, you look at other things within the company. Okay, so this is still on your ladder, your progression, your career development. So you're still very much thinking, this is my step up for my career. Right, okay, so this is what you would do. Ask your pay rise for admin roles, it could be challenging. Why would it be challenging asking for pay rise in someone who has an admin role? Is that because, is there a pay structure? Sometimes, companies have got very rigid pay structures. Yeah, so you have certain bands. I worked for a life insurance company, and, some bigger companies have, salary bands. And so you stay within those bands. So yeah, then that is, you're working within a rigid structure. So perhaps you need to think creatively where you can maybe negotiate working 1 day a week from home, working fewer hours, starting a bit later, ending a bit earlier. And I've seen people able to do that so that you can just negotiate that. Because, and again, so it is a question of what is important for you. You want to keep your job, you enjoy your job. Also, one of the things about stating your case is that if you have done a lot of training, if you have volunteered for more professional training, you have actively sought training, you've taken up all the offers the company's given for corporate training, in-house training, professional training, you've done some outside at your own expense, then, this is all stuff that you can then put to the table and say to them, this is what I'm doing because for me, my career, to develop my career, this is important for me. If I can't develop my career, maybe there's no progression at that moment, then you're thinking the pay rise is where I feel this is my progression in my career. So the pay rise might not necessarily be in quantity, but it could be in that work-life balance that you want. The important thing is, I think it's so crucial, again, is going back to knowing what you want. So doing that very important research, which a lot of us don't do because it's hard work. We got to go find stuff. And oh God, really, I've got to go find stuff. And there's number crunching and finding out what we are. So it's really hard to do that. Daniela, yeah, it depends on the roles. Exactly. So you know your role. You know the reality you're working in. You need to then think about it, about what your role is, what your corporate culture is, what the human resources structure is, the salary structure is. You're working within a rigid structure. Is there room for flexibility? If you don't want to immediately ask your boss, you could maybe refer to HR. Talk to human resources. Find out what are the prospects at your level. What could you ask for? So again, this is all the research you can do so that you're in the strongest position possible to put your case forward. And look like you have done that homework so that they know that, whoa, he or she has really given it some thought. And, and this is a serious discussion. I'm not just asking a pay rise just because I want a pay rise or because I discovered that, yes, so-and-so is earning more, which is, of course, going to be the case with a lot of women who are going to find out that their male colleagues are earning more than them. But again, you could be in danger of then going, this is outrageous, I deserve to earn the same as them, which will backfire. So we need to be clever about this and we need to be rational, most importantly, in order to get that. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. I'm not giving you answers here. This is stuff to, think about. How do we negotiate that pay rise? How do we do this? And then thinking, okay, so once you've done that, once you've done that research, once you know, it becomes so much easier to respond to what, management would say, well, this, that, okay, yes, but how about this? well, how about if? So you're weighing up, again, your pros and cons. You're saying, well, if they gave me this, what am I prepared to accept? If they do this, what am I prepared to do? Saba, lovely to see you. I don't know if this is the first time you've joined into the live lesson, but lovely. So we've been talking about how to negotiate a pay rise. So I don't know whether that's something that you've done before, Saba, or you've had people negotiate a pay rise with you. Maybe you are in management and you've got employees who've asked for a pay rise. How successful were they? And maybe also you as employers, maybe you are in a position where people do ask you for a pay rise. What would you advise is the best way of going about doing it? Maybe you've got experience and you thought, well, that person did it wrongly. Why? And this one was more successful because. So, you know, this is lots of things to think about. And, but yeah, so that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe we're 2 minutes to 4. Sab, I'm so sorry you're coming quite late for the class. We're almost finished, but there's the replay, of course. And, but thank you so much for your time. I hope you found it useful or gave you some food for thought, maybe sharing even yourself about, you know, how would you, you know, think about this. How can you, what takeaways have you got from this class? What are you thinking? How could you, if you did your research, what is your market value and what do you bring to the table in your company? What value do you offer your company? What impact have you made on it? And share, whether it's a company, whether it's a school, or, you know, and think, if you were to negotiate a pay rise, what would you be happy with? And what could you negotiate? Fewer hours, more flexibility, or a day off, or a day working from home, less traveling time. You know, what could you do? And what research could you undertake to find out what the market value is, asking people around? So there's plenty there that you could do before you then present your case. And as Daniela says, timing is very important, then choosing the right moment to then bring the subject up with management. Thank you so much for joining me on this lesson 67 of Wednesdays with EWAT. If you know people who would be interested in joining the EWAT club, and you know, then, you know, please welcome them into the class. Remember, they have to be business professionals. They have to have an intermediate to advanced level of, you know, upper intermediate to advanced level of English in order to follow all the content and the lessons. Daniela, if you're interested in doing our challenge this week, I'd love to. So Susan's done it. I know Saba is going to be doing it. Susan, you're saying you are right. It is very important for us all to continually assess our own role and work. Perhaps we will discover some important facts about ourselves too. Very much so. We often forget to do that, and we forget to see what we actually bring to the table, and what we want to do, and what is our, you know, what we're prepared to accept and what we're not prepared to accept. So I think it's always this reflection is very important. Gabriela, thank you so much. And I think maybe your internet connections were not as bad this time. So I'm really glad you were able to come in. Saba, I'm looking forward to your challenge. So looking forward to seeing that. And Daniela, if you do want to join our challenge this week, which is on crisis management, the Coca-Cola crisis of 1999, then please do join in. But thank you so much for following. I shall see you guys next week for the last lesson in May. And if you are part of the EWAT community on email, you'll be receiving my newsletter on Friday, which is a recap of the last month. And then we're going straight into June. My God, how fast time flies. Anyway, thanks so much. But as I say, if you do know people who you think would be a wonderful fit, a great fit for the EWAT club, then do encourage them to join. They need to just answer those 3 questions in the club and then come along. But post all your questions you have here. Share and share. You're not alone. You know, if we share things together, then the better, and we're stronger together, as people say. Take care, everyone. Ciao for now. See you next week. Ciao.